the Eddie-torial podcast.
They all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
News today, and this news hits close to home. So I brought in Sarinette Rivera, the principal of Inspiration Academy, because this, like I said, hits close to home. So we just found out. Well, why don't you describe the news while I pull up this this article in Fox News?
Okay. We have a group of girls, our cheerleaders, who will be attending the Macy's parade for Thanksgiving. And we found out today that they are going to a Broadway show, which generally we're excited about.
Yeah.
Until we found out that it's a Broadway show and Juliet that has a leading character that's a transgender character.
And on top of that, because this article talks about having a trans person that's performing in the parade.
It's the same one. Yep.
So it's the same person that's in the parade, that's in the...
That is why it's happening. They're bringing the Broadway into the parade.
To push the entire agenda. Now, our girls have worked so hard at going to this and practicing in their cheer competitions and getting ready for this parade. For how long have they been working on this?
Since last spring break, last March. Since
last March. This is big. This is a highlight of their cheer competitions of the whole year. And the parents are paying how much?
$3,700 to participate, each parent.
Oh my goodness. And now, last second, this has been turned into, as you can see here in Fox News article, it's been turned into a trans extravaganza planned for the Thanksgiving Day parade. And there's 2 trans performers expected to participate in the nationally televised parade in New York City. So again, we've got this woke ideology that's coming in and trying to train everybody and condition everybody to normalize this delusion of reality. And now we're struggling with how do we handle this here at Inspiration Academy. So you talked to the girls today. I'll plan on talking to them tomorrow and with the parents so that we are protecting our kids and talking to them about things that we don't want to be talking to our kids about. This is just perversion and delusion of reality that we're being force-fed to try to normalize this behavior. So frustrating, very frustrating. Any other thoughts that you have as far as your conversation today and your thoughts just as a parent?
It's just sad. And it was actually lovely to see when we broke the news to the girls how sad they got. They were brokenhearted for the children who are going to be exposed to that during the Thanksgiving Day parade. This is
about everything. And then they had a plan.
So then I challenged them and I asked them, well, what should we do? How can we be light in darkness? And I was shocked, pleasantly surprised, thank the Lord, because their plan, their first thing was the girls are all staying in the same hotel, meaning all the girls from the entire United States are staying in the same hotel, and they want to create flyers and go out and invite them to a night Bible study. Before they go to bed, they want to be able to offer anybody who wants to come in to pray and do a Bible study
because
together.
This hotel is going to be where all the
cheerleaders are staying there.
That is
everyone, the coaches, everyone. I know. I had tears in my eyes. And I don't know if you know this, there's a tradition. Cheerleaders, everywhere they go for competition, they use clothespins and they just make them with like our logo or anything. They're going to put Bible verses on them and they're going to pin them all over. And it's tradition. You're going to have pins everywhere. Ours are going to have Bible verses on them.
That's awesome.
So we're excited. I was very pleasant.
When the darkness closes in, the light shines that much brighter. God always will bring a standard, raise a standard against the evil that is taking over. So great job, and I'm excited.
And this
I'm
is all
saddened
on their own.
and excited. The dynamics have changed. It's an interesting time.
It is. Definitely.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much.
I met Eddie Speir 10 years ago. I was walking away from pro ball on the road for 6 months out of the year. It's a tough situation to be in. So as I was looking for the next journey of life, next step of life for me, I got a chance to meet Eddie. Eddie was just founding a school with his wife. Got to know Eddie and his story and got to watch his journey from being a business owner to selling it to sacrificing for his 2 sons and daughter. Moved from Colorado out to Florida. Went from sacrificing there to sacrificing his own finances, his life, his everything to be able to set a school, to found a school that has been impactful on hundreds and hundreds throughout the last 10 years. And it's neat to be just equally yoked with a man who is willing to sacrifice. You know, it wasn't easy for me to walk away from the pride and the grandeur of professional baseball. Same thing, it wasn't easy for Eddie to say, hey, I'm going to take my entire life savings and sink it into the betterment of the next generation, to sacrifice for the community, and to be someone who's willing to lead by example. And there's no better, you know, actions speak louder than words. You're not going to find any better situation where somebody has literally taken and sacrificed his life. He and his wife have done an incredible job of just leading by example and walking through just an incredible testimony to be able to really live life for other people, to be sacrificial, to be humble, to be those who are truly, you know, people that live for others. You know, I come from a faith where you love God and love other people, and Eddie has done a fantastic job of living out that same exact thing, where he loves God first and foremost, and then he's willing to sacrifice for other people. There's no better man you're going to want to follow into battle than Eddie.
Mike, it's great to have you on. I'm really excited to have you on. I heard you speak, I think it was at Hillsborough.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately said, I've got to talk to this guy. This guy is making a bold stand for truth against the establishment, and as you say, the oligarchy there in Tallahassee. So anytime that we're fighting against and making bold, courageous statements, risking your career, I'm a fan, and I was a fan then. But do me a favor and let my audience know the details of some of the things that you've how you found yourself on the outside looking in when it comes to Tallahassee.
Oh, well, sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I guess I've been on the outside looking in really the whole time. I mean, I ran as a self-funder outsider. I didn't have much in the way of endorsements from any of the Tallahassee-based groups. I raised very little money in my primary back in 2018. My opponent raised almost all the lobbyist money. I think I got one $500 check. But other than that, it was mostly friends and family and colleagues and self-funding. It was mostly self-funding. So I came up to Tallahassee not really owing anyone anything. And from there,
that makes you a dangerous person.
Yeah, kind of, you know, it certainly gave me a little bit more freedom. I didn't really, I mean, there were people who've helped me, but there wasn't somebody who I owed my political career to. So I was basically able to go and speak my mind and vote my conscience. I mean, every job and every political post is, you know, you make certain compromises, so you don't do whatever you want all the time. But probably more than any other member, I speak my mind and I vote my conscience. And, you know, as time has gone on, I suppose I've done that more and more. It's kind of, I've realized that I can do that. And I've realized that, you know, I ran to go and make a difference and do the right thing. And not because I want to go on to the next job or because I want some appointment or because I need to be a chairman of this or that or raise X $1,000 to do, you know, to give to somebody or to fund some future campaign. If you look at it like that, then everything is just a means to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a dangerous trap. And I like to tell people that you can never love your position more than your purpose. You're there for a purpose to serve people, to represent people. So people get caught up in that all the time. They love the position, they love the title, they love the accolades that come with it. So great job. How did you end up, what kind of put you on the outside of things? Was there a specific vote or a number of votes? How did that happen?
It was probably a number of votes. There were a number of things. I've sat in the judiciary silo for most of my sessions, either on a subcommittee or on the Judiciary Committee. I'm not on the Judiciary Committee anymore, but I'm still on the Civil Justice Committee. And I know litigation. I know the courts. I know litigation. I've made my career, and I've really made my living in the courts. And I'm willing to have a debate. I'm willing to listen to what people have to say. I'm willing to learn, but you're not going to bamboozle me when it comes to the courts or litigation. And a lot of people were doing a lot of different things and this goes back to 2019. They were doing things that I didn't think were a good idea, and they weren't able to persuade me otherwise. We sat down, we had some intelligent conversations, and me and some other members didn't think that some particular proposals were a good idea. So really, right out of the get-go in the Civil Justice Committee, my freshman term, my first term in 2019, there were issues that that I was pushing back on, and from there, there were things like, for example, the congressional vote in 2022. I was one of 8 Republicans, actually at the behest of Ron DeSantis. He was objecting to the first iteration of the congressional maps. They had these horribly gerrymandered districts. We used to have a district that went from Jacksonville all the way down to Orlando. Then they took that district and they changed it to go from Jacksonville all the way to Tallahassee. And it actually kind of wrapped around Tallahassee. And it was a really bizarre shape. And I don't think we were obligated to draw districts that way. I think we should draw clean districts and let the chips fall where they may. And me and 8 of my House colleagues voted against those maps. They ended up passing. The governor vetoed them. And then we enacted maps that I think are compliant with the state and federal constitutions. I think they'll be upheld by the courts when everything's said and done. And those were good maps. We ran a good election. We had good results with those maps, but they weren't drawn for any particular result. They were drawn just to be good, clean maps, to be as compact as possible and to be as fair as possible.
Yeah, that's good. A lot of people will have said, like in the newspapers, that I'm super far right, and I'm attacking in my race, attacking Vern from the super far right. But I find that I agree a lot with people on the left. I agree that we need to trust the electorate, the American people, the residents of Florida, to let the chips fall where they may. So when you said that, that really rings true. Let the chips fall where they may. We've got a job to, you have a job as a legislator to represent, again, let the chips fall where they may. I like that. So you found yourself, I imagine, at different times connecting with people on the left. Has that happened in your tenure?
I mean, I wouldn't say I really connect with people on the left. If I'm voting the same way as the Democrats, I'm usually voting the same way as the Democrats, but for a different reason.
Yes.
Okay, so
tell me about that.
So, for example, like on the congressional maps, the first time the congressional maps came around, and this is another silly thing about House rules, is anything that's remotely controversial where we're going to have a serious discussion, we have structured debate. And so the Democrats are put in the position of being the con, and we're put in the position of being the pro. The Republicans are. So if I want to debate, because say I'm more conservative than my caucus, and I want to debate against a proposal, I actually have to go to the Democrats and ask them to give me time to debate. And I've never had a problem getting time from the Democrats. But for example, on the congressional maps, I wanted to debate against the congressional maps that were put forward by the House leadership a couple of years ago. I had to go to Ramon Alexander. He was the Democrat leader at the time, and he had to give me time. And he wanted to see a little bit of drama. He wanted to see Republicans going against Republicans. So he gave me the time. But they agreed actually with what I said, because they were against the maps because they eliminated some districts in South Florida, ones that we didn't speak about. And I was against the maps because they weren't doing a racial gerrymander, which I thought was inappropriate. And so I had to go to them in order to get time, but they were voting against those maps for a different reason. I'll give you another example. There was the so-called Live Local Act it was a massive expansion of an entitlement program. It was almost could cost the state up to $1 billion, which is a massive amount of money at the state level.
Yeah.
And I was opposed to it because of the fiscal and because I didn't think it was fair to tax my constituents who were in the suburbs in order to subsidize the urban areas, which already receive the bulk of federal and state subsidies and so forth. So I voted against it for that reason, and because I didn't want to create or expand a government program that could be maladministered. There were a handful of Democrats who voted against that proposal because it prevented municipalities from implementing rent control. So I'm all against preventing rent control. Rent control has caused a disastrous housing situation. For example, in New York City, where I'm from, the real estate market, especially the rental market, is in a horrible condition. It's hard to get apartments. The pricing isn't any more fair than it is here in Florida. The quality is a lot worse, and so forth. And so they were voting against the Live Local Act because it didn't allow for rent control. I was voting against the Live Local Act because it was an unwarranted expansion of an entitlement program. So if I find myself voting with the Democrats, it's usually for a completely different reason. And there's a problem when somebody, an ultra conservative, is voting with a bunch of ultra liberals. In some sense, the distrust of government programs or the distrust of government is kind of something that's on both the left wing and the right wing. And in that sense, perhaps the political spectrum kind of wraps around at the edges. But
it might. And in Congress, it's in U.S. Congress, there's a term for it. It's the uniparty. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that terminology or if you agree with it, but it's this idea of entrenched, established politicians protecting themselves and doing so with poor legislation. And we can't, I think you even said this, you can't expect the government that got us into this problem to fix the problem with more government. I'm here from the government. I'm here to help. Ronald Reagan said the scariest words anybody's ever heard. And I love that you are calling that out. I'm just tying that into the uniparty in DC as well. But talk to me about now I've heard a lot about affordable housing, and I went to a meeting here in Manatee County where the chairman of the commissioners, talked about free transportation. And it sounded good. They were spending on public transportation. They were spending $200,000. It was netting $200,000 to make $1 million, something like that. And he said, it's just going to be simpler if we just give it away rather than spending all this money trying to collect this money for public transportation. So he thought it was a great idea that we just have free transportation. He was leading along those lines. And I'm like, wait a second, hold on. This is that free needle that the drug pusher gives you. This is socialism. There's no free lunch. We've got to make sure that we're not training people to get handouts from the government. So anyway, my question for you is affordable housing, because we're hearing a lot about affordable housing at a local level, and my spidey senses are going off that, like, wait, this is more free needles. Be careful. More government control is on its way when you start hearing those things. Have you seen that in Tallahassee?
Yeah, I mean, look, the so-called affordable housing may be affordable for whoever is lucky enough to get in, which is less than all of the people who are working class, less than all the people who need housing, less than all the people who find rent too high. But it's not affordable for the state. It's not affordable for the taxpayer. What they're doing is they're building so-called affordable housing in the urban core. They're issuing property and sales taxes in order to pay for that, among other things. And then they're giving it to people who are really not limited to being working class. You can qualify. If you're a family of four, I think you can have income up to $100,000 and still qualify for this so-called affordable housing. And the program was started in order to help people like teachers and firefighters and police. And in that sense, you could regard it as just kind of part of the compensation for public servants who are traditionally undercompensated. And so you just think of it as part of the pay package. Instead of increasing their salary by X thousand dollars, you're making them eligible for this program. So that you could kind of get your arms around. Now they got rid of that qualification, and they turned to a means test, and it's not a particularly rigorous means test. And they're building these in the urban core. My constituents are in unincorporated South Hillsborough County and North Manatee County. And the question is should my constituents who are in the suburbs, basically, my constituents are basically, it's basically a suburban district, should my constituents be paying taxes in order to subsidize somebody else? So a single mom from Riverview who goes to Walmart to buy sports equipment for her kid, she pays sales tax. Should that money now be going to pay for somebody to live in downtown Tampa? Is that fair? I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it's good for my constituents. And that's the reason I voted against that proposal. So
How many people voted against that proposal?
Only a few. I think I was the only Republican, and then there were less than 10 Democrats who voted against it for the reason totally different than my reasoning, because they didn't think it allowed for rent controls, which I don't believe in rent controls. But.
No, I mean, I want to say, of course not, but we need to remind people that rent control is putting the levers of success or not success in the hands of the government. We're a free country. We need to hold to the Constitution and limited government, not grow government at every chance that we get, because we might be able to make friends, if you will. Mike, so we're talking about insurance, and as I was listening to you just now and previously, it sure feels like we don't have this thing figured out. And yet from Tallahassee, it's almost like the scripted language is that we've done our job, we've done a great job, changes are coming. And you've seen this, what now, you're going on your third cycle of we've got this fixed, and it's not fixed at all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, look, I mean, that's exactly right. Every year of the last 5 years, we've had some sort of insurance reform. Back in the fall of 2022, right after the election, we said that there's no attorney fees for property insurance litigation. That was basically a year ago that we did that. The rates haven't gone down. In March, we said that there's no attorney fees for any type of insurance litigation except for declaratory judgment action over when they completely deny the claim. And those were all almost a year ago, those two pieces of major legislation. Earlier that year, there had been legislation that spring. There was legislation in 2021. There was attempted legislation in 2020. There was the big AOB package in 2019. And none of those resulted in reduced insurance premiums. Even if they weren't expected to result in reduced insurance premiums, we might have at least expected them to result in the insurance premiums not going up, or if they kept going up, that they would go up at a lesser rate than they had been going up previously. None of that happened. The insurance rates went up over the summer. In fact, the first result that we had in the insurance market after we passed the March 2023 bill was that several insurance companies exited the Florida market over the summer. And then as the rates have renewed, I've been getting calls from constituents who claim that their rates are going up again. So all we've done is we've reduced consumer protection. Now it's almost impossible to sue your insurance company. We've moved all of the civil litigation over into the regulatory field, and we've given the CFO and his agencies more powers. And it's yet to be seen whether the regulator will do their job, because a lot of the problems started off with the regulator, if not this regulator, then the previous administration. I'll give you an example. For the AOB crisis in 2019, we had a piece of legislation. The problem was that instead of making claims themselves, homeowners would assign to the roofing company or to the contractor the benefits. And then the contractor would sue in their name, sometimes without their knowledge, sometimes certainly without their further consent,
Yeah.
would sue in their name in order to recover the value of the work that was done on the homeowner's house. And so that resulted in a lot of abuses and excessive litigation. I asked the OIR, Office of Insurance Regulation Commissioner at the time, I said, why don't you why don't you allow insurance companies to write non-assignable policies? I said, is there some regulation or some law that says that you can't write non-assignable policies? He said that there's a regulator that doesn't allow assignable policies. In other words, him. And I looked at the case law and I looked at the statute, and the statute said that that policies can be assignable or not based upon their terms. In other words, that you could write assignable policies or non-assignable policies. And then I looked at the case law, and the Office of Insurance Regulation had taken a position in litigation that you can't write non-assignable policies. Non-assignable policies are less subject to abuse. They can be underwritten at a lower rate. And then you can give the consumer a choice between assignable and non-assignable policies. And that was possible under the laws prior to the 2019 reforms. So here is the OIR commissioner coming in telling us that we have an assignment of benefits problem. And when I ask him why he doesn't let insurance companies write non-assignable policies, he says that it was because his agency took a position. This is the former OIR commissioner, that his agency took a position in litigation and convinced a court to rule against what the plain language of the statute was to prevent insurance companies writing non-assignable policies. So the regulator actually created that problem.
Yeah.
And then they required the legislative fix now to fix it. And now I guess the consumers have a choice between assignable and non-assignable policies. I've never actually seen them write a letter to a consumer saying, here's your premium if you're assignable, here's a lower premium if you're non-assignable. But in any event, that hasn't mitigated the insurance rate. So all we've done is we've reduced consumer protection. You can't sue the insurance company. If you sue the insurance company, you can't get your attorney fees. All of these things have happened, and we still don't have lower insurance rates in the state of Florida. So it would be one thing if we gave up consumer protection and we got lower rates. It's another if we give up consumer protection and our rates continue to increase unabated. And that has been what the result is of all of these legislative attempts to fix the supposed crisis.
See, the challenge is that is such minutia, and I don't mean to be disrespectful in that, but the average voter is like, what? What did you just say? That's, I believe that we need to, I believe that there's corruption. How can you say this? There's something going on behind the scenes that is being protected by some kind of corruption and political influence, because you can't have a inspector general or somebody who's in charge of the insurance OIR who's using obfuscation to try to buffalo a state representative. That's what it sounded like to me, that he was giving you the runaround. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it seemed like a runaround to me, and this was many years ago. But I remember sitting there in the committee. It's like, why did you do that? And I don't know why the regulator did that. I don't know why they weren't following the statute and allowing insurance companies to write non-assignable policies. That would have been something that was allowed under current law, but they didn't do that. And then they come in to the Civil Justice Subcommittee all ostentatiously complaining about a problem that essentially the regulator had created, or at least who hadn't mitigated despite the ample tools at their disposal.
Again, the government causing a problem and then asking to have the keys to solve the problem that they created.
Exactly.
There's no trust left there. Yeah, this has been fantastic, Mike. I appreciate this, and as I've heard you talk about these issues, I go back and I chew on these things because it's systemic of a larger problem of corruption at every area of government, and a lack of trust that voters have, and it's reaching a high watermark. By the way, before I let you go, we've done this here. You're the first one to have the new set, to be on the new set, Mike. We got a soccer ball from New College of Florida. That was the first victory that New College of Florida had in athletics.
Nice.
And the whole team signed that. That's the only one. I'm very proud of that one. I got this from the border trip. And this one I want to share with you. You can't see it, but this is a letter from Anthony Pedicini's lawyers demanding a cease and desist, in which I immediately sent it out on Twitter and said, stop hiding behind lawyers and front groups. So I'm not asking for a comment on that, but I just thought you might like that.
Who's the lawyer who wrote it?
That was Tobin, Reyes, Alvarez, and DeBias.
It's Rick Reyes signed it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah, I know him pretty well.
I bet you do. I bet you do. One of these days we'll have to talk about that. Anyway,
right.
Thank you so much for being on the
Absolutely.
podcast and doing a great job. And as I said before the podcast, and I want to say to everybody that it's rare to have somebody with such integrity and courage as Mike Beltran. So it's an honor to have you. And so thank you for all your service.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Take care. Goodbye.
The Eddie-torial podcast.
They all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.